Welcome to the Momentum Flow podcast, where ideas, innovations, and experiences are shared to create a continuous stream of inspiration and insight. Join me, your host, Luis Eraña, a supply chain expert and investor, as I uncover how visionary founders, operators, and leaders are spotting opportunities, sparking innovation, and scaling profitable growth. From plan to cash, I bring real-world experience and an investor's eye to reveal how clarity, capital, and conviction fuel sustainable growth. Tune in and let's keep the momentum flow going. Welcome to the Momentum Flow podcast, where ideas, innovation, and experiences create a continuous stream of inspiration and insight. Join me, your host, Luis Eraña, a supply chain expert and investor, as I uncover how visionary founders, operators, and leaders spot opportunities, spark innovation, and scale profitable growth. From plan to cash, I bring real-world experience and an investor's eye to reveal how clarity, capital, and conviction fuel sustainable growth. Tune in and keep the momentum flow going. Today, I'm joined by my longtime colleague and friend of 30 plus years, global logistics executive Luis Eraña, whose career spans transformational leadership at multinational giants and now entrepreneurial growth as CEO of Alba Group, a PE-backed, tech-driven customs and logistics company. Luis, welcome to the Momentum Flow.
Thank you, Luis. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks for being here. So Luis, we've known each other for a while, right? So we have common heritage and upbringing. We share the same engineering degree at the same college. I've been a supplier of yours, and we worked for the same company at different periods. Also, at different points in life, we both migrated northbound and have been successful in our own rights. So to begin, could you describe your extensive logistics background from your early experience at P&G, Procter & Gamble, and DHL Supply Chain to your leadership roles at Solistica, Broadtrans, and now Alba Group? Because each of them are companies that operate within logistics and international trade, but at the same time, they differ in important ways. So at a high level, how did those differences shape your approach?
Yes, glad to. And as you say, it's been over 30 plus years now.
Leave it at 30 plus.
Now we've known each other. So, just reflecting back on the journey, it's been phenomenal. I think you and I have talked about how we were lucky to be involved with supply chain in probably one of its most transformational 3 decades. Mm-hmm. And it's been there forever, as we know, right? Logistics and transportation and everything that it means. But I feel very lucky that we've been able to do here what we've done. So just for me and just reflecting the luxury that I had to start with Procter & Gamble, right? Just learning the core, the basics, understanding consumer goods, understanding consumer needs, and then what that did or how it shaped supply chain logistics early stage in my career was just a tremendous opportunity to learn. And you and I got to collaborate there for the very first time.
Yep.
And then, going to the other side of the table and becoming the provider, having to deliver the service now to the client, the customer not being the consumer, but actually who we provided services for. Those 15 years with DHL, I think was the perfect balance, right? 15 years on the manufacturing, supply chain, strategic planning of them, and the whole manufacturing, and as you well described, from plan to cash. But then becoming the integral provider and having to understand and learn how to better serve customers and create value, tremendous opportunity. And then kind of the last phase for me is this incredible transformation where our industry started to attract investment, right? And the ability to bring in not just venture capital, but private equity, like we've never seen it in years before that, which has really enabled and kind of where I'm at today, right? And you and I have discussed a lot, Luis, is it has just enabled some of these very entrepreneurial companies to be able to scale, to be able to, stamp their legacy and take it to the next level by being able to attract talent, by being able to use technology, by being just able to support the investment that it requires to grow businesses. So, that's kind of the three stages I look at it. And like from day one, and I tell everybody, I still enjoy it. I still have this incredible passion for it. So,
It,
um,
it's been
yeah,
quite a journey, definitely. So,
just a very, very, rewarding journey, if you can
so
say.
what keeps your momentum going all along?
Well, exactly this, right? I don't think in our 30 plus years you get to work every day and there's never a boring moment.
Mhm.
Like something's going to happen every day, right? When you think everything's been done or we've seen everything, you'll have a pandemic. And in the customs world that I live now, you'll have a massive disruption in the global economy because of tariff changes. And then when you think it's all settled down, last Friday comes along and here we go again. So,
Yeah.
that's the ability to know that there will be things that need to be solved, that will need to react, that will need to serve our customers, no matter in what part of the supply chain logistics, uh, link you are. That just keeps me going.
So definitely. So as we shared, our similar roots with formal education in Mexico and early exposure to global supply chain organizations. How did that formative environment, that growing up upbringing, shape your leadership lenses?
I think, like if I had to grade it, right, from let's say 0 to 10, it's probably a 10. I don't think I would be sitting here today and being able to share this unless that had not been my origins. And I think, like you will say, we share the same thoughts around that. But just learning to, be in an environment where change was going to be a constant on a daily basis, and the ability to transform and quickly progress things early stage in my career is what allowed me to learn that you have to be ready for that change. You have to continue to learn and understand what's coming, how changes will impact certain things. And then you just have to have that, intent of learning and applying and, making sure that you don't grow stale in what you know.
So,
And,
so
and that early stages being in Mexico and what we were trying to do, I don't think those first 10 years, anything that we thought would happen the next 3 months became reality. It was something different.
I fully agree with
But
you.
but the end in sight is what I would say, right? When you have a clear vision and you know where you want to end, that helps you keep going and adapting. So I would say that's a 10 out of 10 in terms of influencing what I still try to do every day.
So still from those early days, so what is the most defining operational lesson that you still carry today in the way you operate?
Service is king. Service is the very most important element, right? It all starts with the customer. So supply chain, no matter what time in history you look at it, it's about the physical movement of product from point A to point B, beginning to end, from a raw material to a finished product. It's about the money coming back in a reverse, right? So you move the product one way, and then the money flows back all the way back to all the different elements of the supply chain. But in the middle, as we all know, right, you're moving information, you're moving data, you're moving, the ability to understand how that is performing, which creates service. So focusing on service and performance management, absolutely the biggest lesson and
Of
what becomes a reality every day.
I like how you shape it, how you say the service is king. I fully agree with that. So now you and I, you led in Mexico and Latin America, and operating in emerging markets is different, right? So how did that sharpen your approach, specifically in regards to volatility and execution?
Yeah, I think that's the sense of urgency and the ability to quickly be able to shift plans and adjust how you execute is what we both together learned, right? Because if might have been different elements and obviously the most typical when we were getting into this, right? If you remember was what devaluation and
Mhm,
exchange rates and because of all the investments and everything that was happening. But fast forward again, right? Things like COVID and disruptions and crisis here, crisis there, and just I think that the speed at which supply chains change and can now maneuver around the globe, those learnings and how to adapt quick and respond quick to the needs of clients again, which is part of the service,
mhm.
just allowed us to really learn and have that sense of urgency.
Excellent. Well, let's pivot now to so because you've seen the inside of global integrators, right? Now you're leading what I will call an entrepreneurial logistics organization. So let's compare a little bit of both. As you mentioned, and my view of the world is end-to-end supply chain. I think we share that from plan to cash, and you've led large logistic division within global enterprises. Now, how do you define the difference between that broad supply chain orchestration across large entities with senior logistic leadership within a business unit or within a function like a little bit of the specialization of Alba Group?
That's a very challenging question, because while there clear big picture differences,
Hmm.
it's interesting that at the same time some of the fundamental values, some of the fundamental core um, behaviors, core understanding and concepts remain the same. So if I have to answer what are the big differences, I would tell you the first and foremost has to do with talent and capability, ability to execute. And I wouldn't even say that it's one is better than the other. It's just what's required is different. And so developing talent, I would say it's standard key for success in any of the other. I do believe in the global integrators because of the size, the structure. You need a little bit of less risk taking or decision making from individuals because it's more directed. There's more bureaucracy, quote unquote, and hopefully my good friends that are seeing this that are still in the global integrators don't get upset or too upset. Although
Call it structure, more structures.
I know exactly. I know there's a reason for it, and that's why I say I don't think it's
Mhm.
one is better than the other. On the other side, it's different, right? You're there, you have to execute, and you are facing that customer, and if you don't do something, the result will not be there.
Yeah.
So
Now,
that's a major difference, or the biggest difference that I would relay to anyone that's
yeah,
that's having this comparison.
as I reflect on it, also the scale, right? Because scale helps you create standardization in processes and how you operate. Now, in an entrepreneurial firm, more like Alba Group, scale, is you need to build differently because it's different size, different scale, right? Different size. So now you're the CEO. What changes when you move into the CEO role? Not just a division regional leader, but really you're the enterprise architect of the organization, right? So how does that differ for you?
It's first, it's very exciting. It's something that I think when you've had a journey and you get here, it's very, very rewarding. It's very challenging at the same time. But the biggest thing is, I believe, making sure that you have a clear set strategy and that you can hold true and defend that strategy. But more importantly, make sure that the organization can execute the strategy. How do you make it come to life? And so you need to be a little bit more involved than you would be in a more structured environment because you want to make sure you're getting things done and executed. And within private equity environments, results need to be there
So,
probably a little bit quicker than you would normally see it progressing in another context or another environment.
so let me do a follow up on that because I think that's one of the big difference, right? On PE-backed companies versus public or private global enterprises. You know, how does your capital discipline or value creation pressure shift your decision making, right? Because there's different, you know, both of them you need to deliver the financial results, but the pressure of PE-backed companies sometimes uh, is more day to day than quarter by quarter, if it makes sense.
Yes, I would say the time frame within what you're operating is tighter, just
Hmm.
the way the business is financially measured, right?
Hmm.
Um, I think that's a great way to put it, quarter to month. Reality is in one, you're on a rolling 12-month trend,
Hmm.
and the other one, you're more on your yearly business plan, budget, and then you kind of compartmentalize things in there. So that is definitely the speed at which you need to execute is different. But what's interesting, Luis, for me is it's applying the same principles that become important.
Hmm.
Focus, execution excellence, or operational excellence, making sure that you can grow, right? You need to make sure that what you're selling, the way you're selling, the way you're commercializing the business is being effective because you don't have any time to waste, or it could be more damaging in this environment if that top line is not moving, which I believe is the biggest challenge that we all face in these leadership roles.
So,
It's all about the growth and the sales and how is that done and executed, which continues to be the biggest challenge in my view.
so from the margin and EBITDA perspective, which is your day to day now, so where do you see the greatest on top value in logistics companies today? Is it on the how you design your networks, the pricing strategy, the technology enablement, any other,
All of the above.
all of the above? Okay.
Yeah, I think again, right? You need the capability, you need the experience to be able to look at your P&L and be able to impact it and create your strategy slash plans at all levels of that P&L, starting with your top line, how that grows, then how do you create your initial gross profit margin, which is operational excellence, execution, performance management, discipline, but then you add other factors, right? For example, overheads. And what does your SG&A represent? How much are you spending there? Are you being efficient in that spending as well? Because there are
Mhm.
ample opportunities. Within that in particular, I think the technology investment becomes more relevant than ever because it's so dynamic, there's so much change, there's so much noise in a way, quote unquote, because everybody will talk about the tech, everybody will talk about AI, but is it really impacting that line, or are you just seeing the cost spiral up and you're not getting the benefit down? So that creates your EBITDA and that creates your bottom line, all those three components. So you got to stay on top of it.
I don't want us to get into the technology, but before that, maybe one thing that I will think adds context for the listener. You know that unique perspective that you have, being able to compare uh, large-scale orchestrators with niche firms that compete more in specialization and agility. So you can only pick one. What wins today? Breadth or depth?
I think depth. I,
Why?
I I think depth because I sometimes I've equated it if I come from a family of doctors, as you well know, Luis. So my father and my brother, and it was always that depth of specializing on the next thing. And now we all go to see specialists that, I don't know, there's a wrist specialist and it's not just the whole hand.
Mhm.
I see the same thing applied to our industry, and over time, it's just unveiled how different elements, the more depth you get, the more you can explore and gain and create value. Now, somewhere in there at the end is going to be put together because there's only an end-to-end view of whatever supply chain you're in, right? That's the reality also. But more depth, more knowledge, more understanding, I think creates more value at the end of it.
So let me just, I like your analogy with medicine. I think is perfect. So, but when I go to a specialist, as a customer, I expect higher level of service. Is that fair? Is that
100%.
okay? So,
100%. And then not just that, but you want to know, okay, if I'm going to pay you as a specialist and I'm going to have this higher cost, what does that mean? How do you help me with the broader picture, which is that breadth? And that's what I say. At the end, you're going to have to go back. So
mhm.
if your depth is there, you also need to share with that customer how you integrate with a broader picture to help his broader experience, cost, the whole thing.
No,
So you have to be knowledgeable. The depth in what you do is extremely critical. I think that's where you start, but then you also have to understand the bigger picture for your
so,
client.
I think the way you frame it is perfect. It's not either or, but depth precedes breadth, and I think that's what you're saying. So, okay,
Yeah,
excellent, thank you. So now let's pivot a little bit. So you build operational excellence across geographies. Now the industry is being reshaped by technology, and you were hinting about that before, right? And you've led in P&G, in Procter& and Gamble, and DHL. There were different technology theses. Could you elaborate a little bit for people that don't know Alba Group, a little bit of what is the technology thesis of Alba Group today?
yeah, glad to. So the first thing is the depth. We are a customs brokerage platform focused on only trade sensitive verticals, which basically means anything that's complex, especially being imported into the US, we want to take care of. So it's not just getting an entry and transmitting it into customs, but everything that comes with it, different, for example, government agencies that also need to be in the middle of that clearance, FDA, USDA, um, anything related to forced labor tracking and certification, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the niches we're in. But at the end of the day, the core of it is we enable the supply chain of those customers in those verticals to make sure that nothing's going to get stuck. In lame terms and simple language, got to make sure that nothing gets stuck. Because you can imagine, for example, if a shipment of blueberries for a grower coming out of South America into the US gets stuck, that produce can go bad really quick.
And you do that with a lot of
And
people,
there's
or
not
with
a warehouse, like I tell people, there's not a warehouse with more inventory, right? Like if I go to my if I go back to my P&G days and I was sitting in Chile and we were getting all the detergent shipped in from the other countries where we manufactured, yeah, we would be out of stock for a week. It would be a crazy thing, but we would just call the plant and air freight new product because there would be inventory at origin. not the case here when you're talking such sensitive verticals. So your execution has to be at a different level. And so what we try to do, and that's what we're in, is ensuring that everything is flowing, everything is perfect. We're anticipating any potential issue, whether changes in tariffs, and make sure that things keep flowing. The only way, the only way you can scale a business like this is with the right technology.
Right.
Now, luckily, we're in an era where the new technology is just crazy, breathtaking, right?
Mhm.
It's come a long way from the interfaces that you and I dealt with between warehouse and third-party logistics, and I was getting you the orders, and you were gonna then run the picking and load the trucks. It's crazy to see what's happened in 30 years. But now the anticipation, the programming, the computers helping us anticipate and forecast and deal with issues or exceptions, it's just it's mind-boggling. It's very, very exciting.
Now, what do you think is the technology still the most underutilized in your field? In data integration, where do you see it?
I think it's a couple of elements. One, automation, because it's been a very manual and very restrictive compliance, being customs driven,
Mhm.
that we're breaking that mold. And so higher volumes, more volumes being processed at higher speeds require the tech. So the automation is a big, big element. But then the other is just leveraging the ability to handle so much data and so much information and being able to, on one hand, predict, but on the other hand, really to anticipate potential issues based on trends, based on anything that, the data would suggest. So obviously AI is just become a massive enabler of what we're doing.
Where do you see that in operational automation, on predictive
Yeah,
analytics?
it's the combination of how we automate and how we resolve exceptions and how we are able to literally, if you think about it, what we're able to do is each of our customers, each container being shipped around the world to come into the US might have a little difference that in the past you would need to handle manually, and you would be dependent on a human being to figure out, oh, this one's different because of this one. Now we can have a computer learn all those exceptions
Mhm.
and deal with those exceptions once it's learned. So it's automation with anticipation and just creating quality of service at a very, very competitive cost.
So let's go into the cost side because obviously competitive technology, though I fully agree with you, there's amazing things happening in the technology space. At the end, it requires a capital investment, right? And you as a CEO, you need to balance that investment with your EBITDA discipline. So maybe the question is, what's your ROI threshold when you implement digital initiatives within Alba?
Yeah, and that's a really important part of it. But the I think the most eye-opening conclusion that I have from what you just asked, it's actually simpler than we think. And we have spent so much money on the tech as we approached it and used it. And my colleagues and friends that are on those big ERP companies and software
Mhm.
providers over the years, I know they're really starting to evolve and change and understand. But reality, Luis, is that you can get higher connectivity. You're not dependent on the actual software, right? You
Mhm.
and I lived through it. And I won't say names so that nobody gets offended, but that big IT company that we as P&G decided to utilize, and you and I were at the warehouse level having to deal with, yeah, very standardized, very powerful tool that killed our processes, right?
Mhm.
Killed what we were doing. The interfaces were not very good.
Mhm.
Uh, et cetera, et cetera. So we've been limited. We've evolved, and again, these systems were great and created evolution and created certain efficiencies. But in this new world, you can connect in days. You can create capability to adjust to the process and not the process adjust to the system. That's huge, right? For me, that's a big, big game changer. And then the cost at what you can do it, because there's so much capability out there, I guess it's created the ability to reduce. So the ROI is almost like immediate. And we're just completing that exercise within Alba, and it's eye-opening to see how easy it is to justify continuing to move with this technology.
Fully agree with you. I think you need to, it's not only the cost of doing, the cost of not doing, and the alternative cost of keep doing as you were doing in the past. So I fully agree with you. So now, the beauty about technology, it forces you to standardize processes, to clean up your data, and not only that, optimizes your activities within your business. But a byproduct of that, you create a lot of insight and you gain a lot of knowledge. So the question is, do you see Alva evolving, or a certain moment, or maybe let's the function of customs clearance, for example, becoming more, having a side business of advisory rather than just a transactional clearance service, because data
100%.
enables you to do that, right?
100%. So
Right.
we actually have started to really ramp up what we call our trade services group,
Mhm.
where we're like literally taking our knowledge and expertise and compliance, framework with all the data that we have now because of what I just described. And we're starting to really consult and help our customers get ahead and better understand and better react. Point in case where we are today. If we're not able to quickly say what the change, now that the tariffs have been struck down by the Supreme Court and now you have another change, people want to know how much they spend, right? How much they paid on duties and how much of that, once it's legally cleared, how is it going to come back? As a big example. So in reality, Luis, the way I summarize is we've been always, right, or at least from my first whatever years until I got to Alba, we always saw customs brokerage as the necessary evil
Mhm.
in supply chains.
Mhm.
And it's been this big black box, and let the compliance people deal with it. And look, we have to do it to move things in between countries, but nobody really wanted to deal with it, as you know. Reality is there's so much data and information and understanding on how it impacts the supply chain. That's what has got us very excited at Alba. We can lead logistics management to a new level by starting with customs brokerage versus kind of the opposite, right? Where you did all these other things and then you had to do customs brokerage.
That sounds very exciting, especially with what I can picture of Alba, a company that operates in a heavily regulated, process-driven industry, as you described before. So, what is the culture within inside Alba today?
We are super lucky. The founders of we've merged about 8 companies in total, 8 custom brokerage companies, but our larger ones are founders either in an advisory or still involved in the business. Is just an incredible luxury that we have because we have the legacy and the understanding of what created the value and the relationship with the customers. But now all these founders have moved to support the transformation and what we're trying to establish. So the culture today is one of people excited about what's coming and the transformation, but also conscious that our approach hasn't been to eliminate or change any of that core DNA customer service knowledge approach. Now, it's also a challenge, to
Mhm.
be clear. It's not something that happens overnight, and there's a lot of work that goes on, but that's where we are, and that's what's really encouraging and exciting.
So let me try to draw for the audience a lesson from your leadership experience on this. So now as a CEO, what is the single most important communication discipline that every CEO should master today?
Well, I think the first is just the ability to really listen with intent.
Please.
You have to absolutely be ready to listen and learn every single day. Doesn't matter how much experience, how much you've been there. If the core of what you're trying to do is transform, then we all have to learn and we all have to change and we all have to be able to shift and pivot and move with whatever is coming our way. So I would say that's the core, but then you got to put it in place. You have to create the discipline and the governance on how you manage the business so that that input is coming all the way down from the organization and it gets to you, so that it doesn't get stuck in the levels. Because sitting at a management team or whatever you call your executive leadership and thinking that's where you're going to get everything, I would say no. You got to reach out, you got to be there, you got to talk to the customers, you got to listen to your employees, listen to the customer, listen to your key stakeholders, which in our case is our investors. So if you can master listening with intent to your three key pillars of stakeholders and then connecting it all together, I think that's how you create the value and move towards your successful uh, results.
Very insightful, Luis. Thank you. Um, we're converging towards the end of this, but let me just do something different today. So I'm going to go through a lightning round of questions, and
Okay.
a few questions and maybe a couple of phrases. Just go through them just quickly. There's 4 or 5 of them. So one metric from your perspective that every logistics CEO should watch daily.
On-time performance.
On-time performance. Okay.
On-time performance.
So AI, is it hype or is it structural shift?
Structural shift.
Fully agree. What is the biggest misconception about customs brokerage today?
That it's just there's this saying that you date your forwarder and you marry your broker, which means a very strong relationship. But I think, again, the impact into supply chain integration leadership can come from a broker.
Okay. What is a leadership habit that compounds over time when you keep doing it over and over again?
You're not perfect, and there's always to learn, and you gotta always keep, searching for the feedback that will help you improve.
Okay. One last one, and obviously off the record because you're not talking with your board on anything, but one bold prediction for global trade in the next 5 years
It's gonna explode. It's
from the
gonna it's gonna just become even more substantial and important to the future of our world. The inflection point we're in and the changes that triggered last year will have a massive impact in supply chain design, execution, and requirements over the next 3 to 5 years.
fully agree with you. So now truly the last question, and every conversation I have, I end up with a similar question. I, my thesis is momentum is created when clarity, capital, and conviction align. So what is the next momentum chapter for Alba?
we will double in size. So we will go from about 300,000 entries as a platform as we speak, and we will be over 600,000 entries in a couple of years.
That's a bold statement. If you want me, I'll kind of bridge that from the final video of this conversation. But thanks for the candor. I appreciate it. So Luis, this has been really a masterclass in leadership across scale, from global integrators to entrepreneurial logistic growth. You reminded us that while networks, technology, and capital matter, the sustained momentum is built through culture, clarity of strategy, discipline execution. You talk service, you talk listening. Luis, muchas gracias for sharing your experience, your perspective, and your passion for this industry with the momentum flow. Thank you.
Gracias a ti, and thank you everyone for listening in.